What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to my review of The Fall Guy, directed by David Leitch and also written by him and a bunch of other people, but very noticeably Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling, the two stars of the film who apparently also had a hand in the writing room, which is pretty cool. And this film tells the story of a down-and-out stuntman played by Ryan Gosling who must find the missing star of his ex-girlfriend's, played by Emily Blunt, blockbuster film, which also just so happens to be this character's directorial debut. So I was actually really looking forward to this movie. Obviously, I'm a massive fan of Ryan Gosling, who isn't, but also Emily Blunt is one of the biggest badasses of Hollywood. Emily Blunt can really do it all. She can write, she can direct, she can act. I mean, she really is a jack of all trades, and same with Ryan Gosling as well. Ryan Gosling obviously hit peak stardom last year in Barbie, which was very well deserved. His performance as Ken was most people's favorite part of that movie. And let us never forget the absolute euphoria that was his performance of I'm Just Ken live at the Oscars this year.
I'm just Ken, anywhere else I'd be today. Is it my destiny to live a life of love for truth?
However, when it comes to action comedies, my standards do tend to be a little higher than they do with other films. I understand that there's aspects of that aren't very fair and that are extremely biased, but that's also just how I feel, and you're free to have your opinion just as I am free to have mine. That doesn't mean that I don't like action comedies or that I look down on that genre, because there's plenty that I love. I'm just saying, for me to truly fall in love with an action comedy, there needs to be... I just have higher standards for it. You know, for people who love action comedies, they're not going to care so much if the characters aren't the most charismatic people ever. They're not going to care so much if the directing or the special effects aren't the most convincing ever. But for me, those things really matter and kind of make or break whatever action comedy film I'm talking about, honestly. And strangely enough, I think it's because I know how good action comedies can be. You look at some of the greatest action comedies of all time, and they excel in all of those areas that I just mentioned. So that did put a bit of skepticism into my head when I was going in to see this movie, but there was one last thing that was influencing my expectations, and this was actually something that was getting me excited for the movie again, and that was, it seemed like this movie was going to be a love letter to stuntmen, if nothing else, which I was extremely excited for. Stuntmen absolutely deserve their own category at the Oscars. There are plenty of jokes made about that in this film, because stuntmen really are the people that hold the film industry together. All of your favorite big movies of all time, stuntmen are why a lot of those sequences work so well. Your action movies, your horror movies a lot of the time as well. And there's also other movies that have like physical comedy gags that were done by stuntmen. Back in early Hollywood, a lot of directors were their own stuntmen. This resurgence of incredible action movies that we're getting right now, with movies like the John Wick franchise, the Mission Impossible franchise is still going pretty strong, but also a movie like Monkey Man, which I recently reviewed, go ahead and check that out. Stuntmen are really the ones to thank for all of those incredible action sequences, and also actors like Keanu Reeves who are willing to do their own stunts. And this movie also makes a lot of jokes about actors who are not willing to do their own stunts, but still have these massive egos and play these action heroes and everything and sort of idolize themselves. And given the way that I'm talking about that stuff right now, you're probably able to tell how I feel about this movie, and yes, your assumptions are correct. I had a damn good time with this one. This is a very fun, very entertaining, energetic film. Is it a masterpiece? Is it a generation-defining action film? No, not by any means, but I don't think anybody really wanted that out of this or was going into this expecting that. I feel like most people just see that Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt are in this film, and it's a romantic comedy with a lot of action-centric elements, and it's a love letter to stuntmen. Like, it just seemed... I don't know, like, if you went into this expecting a generation-defining action masterpiece, then I'm sorry, but you went into the wrong movie. Even with those apt expectations, though, there are a handful of things about this movie that actually did surprise me, most namely the titular romance. Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt have incredible chemistry on screen. They play incredibly well off of each other, and for the most part, the comedy around their dynamic works insanely well. There's this amazingly hilarious hilarious scene where Emily Blunt's character is forcing Ryan Gosling's character to do this fire stunt where he gets lit on fire and thrown into a rock over and over and over again. She's just making him do it over and over and over again, giving him all this unnecessary direction about the characters in the movie that he really doesn't need in order to be set on fire and thrown into a wall. And it's clear the subtext there and like what she's actually trying to say to him, and you just see everybody else on the crew just like, what? Are they talking about the movie right now, or are they sorting through some personal shit on our set? What makes it even funnier is that most of the people listening in on it are extras in the film who are dressed in these insanely ridiculous alien costumes, so they're just standing there like, it was really funny. There's a lot of scenes like that in this movie that do visual comedy extremely well, but also the performances in this movie obviously were not going to be bad, and they certainly are not. All of the performances in this film are insanely well done and very enjoyable. Remember how I said that some of my standards for action comedies tend to be higher in the realms of charisma and likable characters? This movie excels at that. There are tons of very likable characters in this movie, even the characters that you are narratively not supposed to like. The actors are doing such a good job that they become those characters that you love to hate, and every time they're on screen, they're very entertaining to watch even though you hate them. Teresa Palmer had a very, very small role in this movie. I believe she was only in it for one scene, but she stole the show when she was on screen. I thought she was awesome. Now, this being an action film that is a big fat love letter to stuntmen, how are the stunts? How's the action? Do they pull it off? Is this movie hypocritical, or does it stay true to that love letter sentiment? The action sequences in this movie are very fun and very thrilling. There are a couple that I think overuse CG a bit too much, which felt a little ironic given that the film that is being made within this film, you know, Emily Blunt's character, her character's name is Jodie. Jodie's movie that she is making is sort of depicted as this film where she's trying to do as much practically as possible. And so I just found it kind of ironic that there were a lot of action sequences in this film that are happening off that movie set. Like the scenes in the movie where you see them filming their own action sequences on the set of Jodie's movie, that all looks fucking amazing. It looks incredible. But then the action movies in the movie that are happening like in the real world, so to speak, looked more artificial to me. They looked a little bit more fake, which I did find kind of ironic given the film's message about stuntmen and practical effects and, you know, making everything look so good. And the reason it looks so good is because of these incredible workers. It didn't really take me out of this movie though. There were just a couple prominent shots in certain action sequences where you could really tell. But as I said, it didn't really take me out of the movie, and just cinematography wise, all the action sequences in here are very well done and pretty thrilling for the most part. I will say the main catalyst for the plot of this movie, that being the star of Jodie's film, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, going missing, and that whole subplot there that has to do with all this like shady bullshit and like all this corruption and stuff. While I do think it is a pretty comedic depiction that parallels real life situations in Hollywood very well, I would be lying if I said that I wasn't really invested in it at all until at least the halfway point. What saves that first half of the movie is Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling, and also the sure hand of direction behind the camera by David Leitch. But up to a certain point, that plot line about the lead star going missing, which is the catalyst for everything that happens in this movie, just kind of felt like it was thrown in there just so that this movie could have a forward-moving plot, because maybe they just thought a movie about a stunt guy who's, you know, lovesick over his ex wouldn't be intriguing or entertaining enough, although I kind of disagree. For a big portion of the movie, it just kind of feels like this thing they have in there as an excuse to have Ryan Gosling's character exercise his stuntman talents out in the real world. But as I said, that's only for a certain portion of the movie. Towards the third act of this movie, there are some reveals and some twists that I actually genuinely didn't expect. Maybe I'm stupid for not expecting them. Maybe for a lot of other people, it was very easy to pick up on. For me, no. The scene where the movie wanted me to be shocked and surprised, I genuinely was. So call me an idiot, or maybe it's just a well-written movie, I don't know. The point is that it really worked for me, and from that scene on, I thought this movie was basically perfect. Now, you might think that that's actually sort of a condescending comment about the movie, saying that only the last 30 minutes of it are what are really great, but no, I pretty much loved the movie as a whole. It just wasn't, you know, like amazing or anything, but those last 30 minutes really do make it for me, which if any portion of your film is going to be the most fulfilling and satisfying part, it should be that final act. You gotta go out with a bang, you gotta go out with a punch. For example, if someone finds the first 2 acts of your movie boring, but then the last act is amazing, but amazing in the way that it makes the previous 2 acts more enjoyable now, because now you can realize it's all building up to that, which in my opinion is what this movie does, then you have a pretty well written and thought out script on your hands. Now yes, there are still aspects of the film that don't quite work for me that do have to do with that plot line, but I did think they stuck the landing, is what I'm trying to say, in an unnecessarily long-winded way. And I know I ranted about some of the CGI in the action sequences, but do not misinterpret what I'm saying. The stunt work in this movie is promptly incredible, and Ryan Gosling apparently did a lot of them himself. I also found the romance between Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt surprisingly touching. I mean, I already talked about how good their chemistry and their character dynamics are and how funny their banter is, but there are certain points in this movie where it actually is genuinely sweet, where there is some dramatic acting at play. Not a ton, but just enough to make you at least a little bit like genuinely care about the relationship. And it was actually really nice. It was. It genuinely, I believed that these 2 characters were in love, and by the end of the movie, I wanted them to reconcile. I wanted them to be together, and there's certain plot points and emotional beats that are hit in this film that make that aspect of the movie all the more beneficial and make those moments extremely fulfilling, way more fulfilling than they would have been if you didn't give a shit about the romance. If I had to pinpoint any other issue with the movie before I let you guys go, I would say that the pacing is a little wonky. This movie is just over 2 hours long, and I don't know if it needed to be. I think there is a really great hour and a half to hour and 45-minute cut of this movie somewhere on the cutting room floor, but regardless, the movie we got is still insanely entertaining, very, very fun, has very charismatic and likable characters, a really great and well-developed romance beating at its center, and pretty impressive action sequences and stunt work. And where this movie really shines is the scenes where you are on set with Emily Blunt, just watching her do her thing as a director. And I will say, I loved this depiction of her as a director. She's very direct, and she's very clear about what she wants, but she's able to do that without being an asshole and without belittling people, which I really appreciated. I found the movie pretty hilarious for the most part. There were a lot of jokes that really landed for me, so yeah, guys, all in all, I mean, as an action comedy, as I said, it's not like this is a masterpiece or a generational defining action film or anything, but for what this movie set out to be, just an action rom-com that seeks to entertain you, give you some thrills, and make you feel good, and also be a love letter to stuntmen, which that's probably its most valuable asset. This movie kind of checked all the boxes for me. I will say, if you're somebody who's not really interested in filmmaking or stunt work at all, maybe this movie won't work as well for you because so much of it is focused on that world and so many scenes take place on the set of this movie, and a lot of the comedy in the film sort of relies on you knowing certain things about how movies are made, and if you're somebody who doesn't, or you just don't really give a shit about that world, maybe it won't land as well for you. But for me, as you can imagine, I was having a ball this entire runtime. So guys, have you seen The Fall Guy? If so, what did you think about it? Be sure to hit up the comment section and let me know. Also, be sure, if you feel so inclined, to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. And if you would like to go the extra mile, go ahead and turn on those bell notifications so you get notified every time that I upload new content. Thank you guys so much, as always, for watching. I will see you in the next video, and until then, keep writing, keep shooting, and keep editing.